A very good evening and thank you for watching Monday's edition of your weekly dose of primetime news. I'm Selima Shimwefeleni Masipa. The just concluded African Union Summit 36th Ordinary Session headlines tonight's bulletin. Head of State Dr. Hage Geingob arrived back home from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, where he attended the summit. The summit took place from the 16th to the 19th of February. Let's listen into the portion of what the president imparted.
Obviously, I say we're not discussing national statements. We didn't make national statements. We're just talking on the reports given by different sectors. So we're discussing that. Of course, I would say eventually we're discussing the well-being of Namibia, of African people. We're discussing the question of the diseases. We're discussing the issue of wars, as I said. That is affecting the well-being of African people. Then the continental African trade area was discussed as an avenue that we must use to trade. Intra-African trade must be increased before we go outside. So we must actually also add value to our resources instead of sending them in a raw form.
Staying atop the just concluded AU summit, the African Union on Sunday revealed that Israel's observer status at the bloc was suspended and therefore had not been invited to its weekend summit after a row over the ejection of one of its top diplomats. More from this report.
A furious Israel accused Arch-4 Iran of orchestrating the expulsion of the diplomat from the AU summit's opening day on Saturday, with help from Algeria and South Africa. The incident highlighted a spat within the Pan-African bloc over a 2021 decision by AU Commission Chief Moussa Faki Mahamat to give Israel observer status. The move was greeted with howls of protest by powerful member states including Pretoria. Last year's AU summit suspended a debate on whether to withdraw the accreditation and established a committee of heads of state to address the issue. Faki told reporters on Sunday that means that the status is suspended until such a time as this committee can deliberate, and so we did not invite Israeli officials to our summit. He added that an investigation was being conducted. Videos circulating on social media showed Gaz escorting the Israeli Foreign Ministry's Deputy Director General for Africa, Sharon Barley, out of the AU Assembly Hall in the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa. A spokesman for the ministry had said Barley was an accredited observer with an entry tag, accusing the AU of being taken hostage by a small number of extremist states like Algeria and South Africa, which are driven by hatred and controlled by Iran. Reporting for Nampa TV, I'm Michael Madimba.
Still on the AU summit, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Saturday said multiple interlinked challenges are confronting the world, with Africa facing major challenges.
Guterres, while addressing the summit, said he recently addressed the UN General Assembly on the multiple interlinked challenges confronting the world. Guterres said the dysfunctional and unfair global financial system that is failing developing countries and the deep inequalities as well as the less availability of resources to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic were among the major challenges to Africa. He said a cost of living crisis exacerbated by the consequences of the Ukraine crisis and climate chaos is putting communities and lives at risk and displacing millions. Guterres stressed the need for developing nations to have a far greater voice in global institutions, including the UN Secretary Council. According to Guterres, multilateral development banks should transform their business model and accept a new approach to attract greater flows of private capital into the African continent. The UN chief said even though African countries are least responsible for ongoing climate crises, the people on the continent are feeling the most devastating impacts of climate change. Reporting for Nampa TV, I'm Michael Madimba.
Back home, the governor of the Bank of Namibia, Johannes Gavachap, launched the modified 20 Namibian dollar banknote in Opuo earlier this morning. Let's have a listen.
The modified Namibia dollar banknote, the $20 note, that will be launching today and issued to the market, bears the signature of the incumbent governor. So it is my privilege and honor to sign on this banknote and to issue it to the market. Ladies and gentlemen, it is important to note that Namibia remains predominantly a cash-based economy, particularly in the semi-urban and rural setup. In 2022, the total currency in circulation stood at 4.8 billion Namibian dollars, equating to 2.5% of Namibia's total gross domestic product. Equally worth noting is that over the past few years, the bank has observed a steady growth in the demand for currency. In the immediate post-COVID environment, the bank noted a 2.4% increase in the currency in circulation in 2022 compared to 2021. It is evident from this that many of our people continue to use cash, that's coins and banknotes, as the primary form of payment in settling their transactions, conducting the business activities, and meeting social obligations. And it is equally our priority to ensure that banknotes and coins are accessible, durable, recognizable, and easily authenticated. Launching this banknote today signals our commitment to promoting the inclusion of all Namibians in our economy by increasing the participation and expanding opportunities.
Welcome to Primetime Biz. The segment kickstarts from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, where the African Union insisted on Sunday it had zero tolerance for undemocratic changes of power and vowed to push through a continent-wide free trade deal as it wrapped up a two-day summit. Let's get the gist from this report.
Leaders of the 55-nation bloc met in the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa to discuss a slew of challenges facing the continent, including coups, conflict, and climate change. On the final day of the summit, the AU said it was maintaining its suspension of 4 countries, Burkina Faso, Guinea, Mali, and Sudan, which have been ruled by military leaders following coups. On the sideline of the AU meeting, the Regional Economic Community of West African State Bloc also said it had maintained sanction on the 3 Sahel countries. The Economic Community of West African States has also decided to impose travel ban on government officials and senior leaders in those countries. Fearing contagion in a region notorious of military takeovers, the Economic Community of West African States imposed tough trade and economic sanctions against Mali, but lesser punishments against Guinea and Burkina Faso. All 3 countries are under pressure from the bloc to return swiftly to civilian rule by 2024 for Mali and Burkina Faso and a year later for Guinea.
Staying with the AU, a senior AU official noted African governments should mobilize sustained resources to finance agriculture in their respective countries so as to meet the growing food demand for their populations.
Addressing the press recently, Josephus Sako, AU Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy and Sustainable Environment, urged African leaders to fulfill the commitments made in the 2024 Malabo Declaration. The AU is creating awareness that the majority of AU member states are not investing 10% of their national budget into agriculture and they are off track. Sako went on to say that African countries are not investing and are not domesticating their National Development Plan or the National Investment Plan to the African Common Policy. noting that 1 out of 4 people in Africa suffered from acute hunger as the COVID-19 pandemic hits the continent hard in 2021. The commissioner stressed the need for African countries to transform their agriculture and feed their people during hard times by investing at least 10% of their national budget.
That's where we leave it for the top news for tonight. Stay tuned for the economics roundup, followed by the weather forecast. Welcome to Sport Planet. Domestic football dominates the segment. African Stars and University of Namibia continued their fine form in the Namibia Premier Football League matches on Saturday and Sunday as Julinho Sporting and Young Africans stuttered. On Saturday at Legare Stadium, Stars completed their first round matches with a hard-fought 1-0 victory over Young African, courtesy of a goal by former Brave Warriors captain Ronald Kashiere. The victory means Stars finished the first half of the season with 41 points from 15 games, having drawn only 2 matches and losing none. The final match of the season saw home team UNAM produce a great performance with a 2-0 victory over third-placed Life Fighters. Veteran defender Willem Wedihanga and striker Goodwin Aseb were on target for the students. UNAM followed up their good performance by winning 3-1 against Sporting at the same venue. Meanwhile, a total of 34 goals were scored on the opening day of the 2023 FNB Women's Super League on Saturday. The first match of the day was at the University of Namibia Stadium between Commerce Nampol and Gals and Goals, which saw the latter emerge victorious by a 1-0 scoreline. The second game of the day at the Namibia Football Association Technical Centre saw beauties from Windhoek thrash Okahanja Football Club 7-2. The final match at the NFA Technical Centre saw defending champions Tura Magic Ladies run riot against Rightway, winning the match by an 8-1 scoreline. Stand by for your sports roundup. This is where the Monday edition of Primetime News concludes. Many thanks for tuning in. Do join us tomorrow for yet another edition of Primetime News. From myself, Selima Shimwe Feleni Masipa, and the entire production crew, it's good night.